I worked in sales, customer service, customer experience, and specialised in kind of building up customer support teams. Businesses have data everywhere. Often they don't understand the amount of it, they don't understand the importance of it, they don't understand how to bring it all together and make it meaningful. With one of our foundation customers, we have twice now achieved a 0-day sales close. How would an ordinary person who was using tech respond to what we're delivering? And
welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Deena Yule from Kira. Deena, thanks for making the time to have a chat today.
My pleasure.
For those of you that are new here to the podcast or don't know how I do this, I haven't really met Deena before, so I don't know much about her. So I'll let her take away her own introduction and tell us who she is and what she does.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. So my name's Deena Yule. I'm a co-founder of a company called Knowledge Orchestrator, and the product that we have is Kira. I come from a completely non-tech background, so I know very little about tech, but I do know about, my specialty is kind of around process and business organisation and structure and people and culture and that kind of approach. Luckily, I have a co-founder who he's the founder of the business, I suppose. I'm the co-founder, who does know a lot about tech. And his name is Dr. Errol Brandt. So he's the tech brains behind Kira. And we first met, we used to work together at a packaging company called Amcor in Melbourne. And we've known each other for about 15 years. We started working together on a turnaround project when part of the Amcor business was sold to a company called Aurora, part of the packaging business. And that business was losing about $1 million a week. And Errol and I were part of the team who worked on that turnaround, which was very successful, and Aurora is now one of the most successful packaging companies in Australia. So that's kind of how we got together. My background is, as I said, I worked in sales, customer service, customer experience, and specialised in kind of building up customer support teams, starting with state-based teams, and then we took that to national teams and had to look at all the things about, what processes we needed to put in place to make sure our service was consistent no matter what customer got what person when they phoned up, how to take state-based and blend that into one national team and look at all the complexities around that, what kind of tech support we needed. And I suppose that's where my interest comes in is, for me, tech is about how the end user uses the product. So I think at one point Errol described me as the ordinary person in this tech world of how would an ordinary person who was using tech respond to what we're delivering, and does it make sense, is it intuitive, how much training do you need, all of those things that a lot of the tech guys go off and design things that look beautiful in the back end and work really well, but when customers use them, they're not user-friendly and they don't deliver kind of on the promise that you want. So, part of my role in Kira is making sure that what we deliver has a great customer experience component to it. It's, I suppose about, human-centered design, the human use of AI, not just AI taking over the world. So, how people use it, not just how tech people deliver it.
Yeah, and probably not just adding a chatbot to something, which is what most people's interpretation of AI has been the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there is a lot of the term AI slop around, and there is lots of chatbot. What Kira does is completely different to that. So, we kind of help organisations pull collective data together and turn that data into knowledge, I suppose. And that's where when we started, Knowledge Orchestrator was the product and the company, and that was really around trying to centralize a lot of business knowledge in one place with accessibility for people. And then we supported that with some business analytics that used AI. What we found when we first started the company is that although everybody thinks knowledge and access to knowledge and keeping knowledge within the business is important, people don't actually want to pay to have that done or don't want to put the time in to do it. But we're very, very interested in the business analytics and the AI component of that. So we kind of turned the product upside down, and now it's really focused on what we call kind of enterprise AI and how the business analytics support a company with the knowledge piece in that still there, but in the background. It's not the main focus.
So it's more about the outcomes of what you can draw from the data rather than just having an interface to the data.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and a lot of what we do is around that, the so what piece, I suppose. You've got businesses have data, everywhere. Often they don't understand the amount of it. They don't understand the importance of it. They don't understand how to bring it all together and make it meaningful. So what Kira tries to do is kind of unify all of that complex information and deliver it to people in a way that's easy to absorb, and it actually tells them the so what. So it, you can take a sales report, run that runs in Kira. It's personalised for the salespersons. If you have 200 salespeople or 10 salespeople, everybody gets a personalised report. And essentially, you can ask it to tell you what are the actionable insights. What's the so what of this information? So people don't have to run through all of the numbers and figures and drop it into a spreadsheet and play around with Excel, for a couple of days before they can find the information. And it happens in real time. So I think one of our big successes recently is with one of our foundation customers. We have twice now achieved a 0-day sales close. So on day one of the new month at 9 a.m, there's every customer, all of their analytics has been written, every product. And so this customer that we have has a couple of thousand customers, 50,000 products. And at day one, 9 a.m, every bit of business analytics for that month is ready to go. So our next step is to make that happen on a weekly basis and then on a daily basis. So essentially, you're having month-end run every day. And it means that, people can see trends really quickly. If things are changing, they don't have to wait until halfway through the second month and go, oh, look what happened last month.
That lag isn't there, so you can make quicker decisions, get better insights, and try and close on those deals easier because now you've got more up-to-date information.
Yes, correct. And so we currently are doing that with sales, so sales analytics, but the intention is to build that product portfolio so that we can do the same thing with, working capital. So you can see what's happening with your inventory really quickly, make decisions about procurement. What am I going to buy this month? Because I can see those trends really quickly. Is another part of my business purchasing something at a much different rate than I'm purchasing it in this state? And so trying to combine all of those things together. We also see, I think, lots of businesses, they go out and buy new businesses as part of their growth plan. And it's very difficult often and takes a lot of time to integrate those businesses into their IT. So we're able to kind of take quite disparate source information or source data and pull that together and and essentially put Kira, lay that over the top. So as long as you can supply the data in whatever format, we can pull that together in one spot. And if you've got, 5 companies that you've just purchased, or, whatever that is, essentially within a couple of weeks of that purchase, we can be seeing all of that data in one place, so that your leadership team can make those decisions about what's happening in the business. And that visibility, I suppose, is quite different.
Yeah, that'll accelerate everything, especially if you can then bring in all the different sources, process it, and give the insights that matter to the person, rather than them having to think about it, and then maybe draw some further insights that they wouldn't have thought about either, because either it'll take them too long, or they don't have the time to sit there and try and understand what can I draw out of the data.
And I think that's the beauty of AI. What we want to do is help support people to make decisions, not have AI make the decisions, but AI has that ability to look through vast quantities of data, and be able to pick out trends and things that you wouldn't, you might see if you had a full-time, business analyst working on that. But lots of companies, either can't afford that, and don't want to go down that path. So
what was it in your journey through your previous experience in companies that took you to then start the Knowledge Orchestrator and Kira?
So it was actually Errol who started it. And what had happened is we both had a colleague that worked for us that used to run the entire budget process for the business. And that budget process was done, I don't exactly remember the number, but let's say something like 50 or 60 linked spreadsheets. And he essentially was, as in lots of business, the only person who knew all of that, how all of that worked. And he died suddenly. And he'd been a colleague of both of ours for quite some time, was at work one day, went home, didn't come back the next day. There was nobody in the business that knew what he knew. It wasn't captured anywhere. It wasn't documented. And so it was Errol's role to try and pull all that information together and deliver a budget. And I think this had happened, quite close to the budget cycle, the delivery time frame of that. So there was a significant amount of work to try and pull that together, and also then to acknowledge, well, how do you make sure that doesn't happen again? And so that's where the Knowledge Orchestrator piece came out. Errol originally was working with IBM Watson on that, but we fairly quickly found that we just weren't able to scale that in the way that we needed to deliver the outcome. And I think when we first started, we assumed that kind of the cost of creating words, I suppose that's something I need to say.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it.
Yeah. So Kira's not about delivering dashboards. It's about taking spreadsheets and that kind of dashboard information and turning it into words, which helps you train a large language model as well. So you need the words, and we look at it, the fact that maybe a human might be able to create 1 million words of analysis, and that might cost you, $100,000. It might take them a year to create 1 million words. When we first started using IBM Watson, we were creating 1 million words at about $5. It was costing us to create 1 million words. We've now done a couple of iterations of Kira, and the one that we're using now, we're working with AWS, probably costs us about half a cent to create 1 million words. And it's incredibly fast. The analytics are just really, really quick. I can look at a sales report and I can say, from this information, provide me my top 10 things that I need to go and do. What are my top 10 actionable insights? And I would say within like a second and a half, I've got this full list delivered to me. And as I said, I can run that in real time. So when we start to get the data daily, I can look at that every day and run that kind of information, as I said, in, a couple of seconds.
And even if that took 15, 20 minutes, people wouldn't complain with the insights you'd be getting, considering how long it takes to do that by hand.
Correct. And I think someone did say to us once, well, time's not the big deal, but time actually equates to money. So over a period of time, the more time that you're using that to create it, as you said, even if it was only 15 minutes, if you do that across, thousands of people in an organisation, that starts to bring in cost.
And you probably save in the ways people's workflow is, because ask a question and get an answer immediately. You can continue working down that train of thought or down that task, rather than issue a task, go do something else, then have to swap, because that task switching context ends up being mentally fatiguing, and that's where the time waste happens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know about you, but once I start to focus on something, I want to sit with it and get it done. And as you said, even if you only go away for 10 minutes, you get distracted, something else happens, you might never get back to it, or you might not get back to it for another couple of days. So being able to have that information delivered to you almost immediately is, I think is very worthwhile.
So just mentioning there, because you mentioned IBM Watson, that means you would have started this a while ago, before the ChatGPT craze happened from a few years ago. So I'm assuming this is probably pre-2022, even earlier.
So we established the business at the end of 2022. I would say Errol's probably been working on this for 5 or 6 years before that as well. So he was doing a lot of this stuff before AI, was much of a thing, certainly before ChatGPT.
Yeah, the current craze.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where we'd be without it. I think we all
for sure.
We all like it now, or some version of it.
I can't tell you how many times an hour I use ChatGPT. I've probably got about 30 tabs open with different conversations.
Yeah, me too. And it's a great way to pull a lot of kind of disparate thoughts together and organize them. I think it's you don't want to use it to take over your brain, but you do want to help it to sort your brain out sometimes, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So just touching on something you mentioned earlier, that like user-centric design that you mentioned, how is that sort of driven how you're approaching the build of Kira and how to provide value to users? Because I think that's an area that a lot of people probably miss, especially if they're a tech person like myself. You know how to deliver it, you put it together in a way that works, but a lot of people don't necessarily focus on the experience or how to deliver something to a user that can seem easy and simple to use. Well, it's probably extremely complex to bring it together.
Yeah. Look, certainly the complexity, and I always talk to, our development team, and I tell them, look, my eyes are going to glaze over. I don't understand what you're talking about. Tell me all the tech you want, but it's not going to sink in. But what we do make sure is that when we are releasing product, we, myself and our general manager, who both come from customer support and customer experience backgrounds, we put that lens over everything every time we test something. Will people, and the tech guys will look at something even simple as a login and go, oh, I don't need to explain that to people. But I can't tell you how many times I've sent something out and people go, oh, what button do I hit? What do I hit there? It's like, it's not obvious. And if you have to click a couple of times with anything, then you're much better to either describe it simply or change the design. So instead of 2 clicks, it's 1 click. Or even just on the button that you're clicking on, make the words more obvious about what the outcome is going to be when you click it. And so I think we go back to our head designer quite a bit, going, yep, it looks beautiful, but it still doesn't quite give me, the simplicity that I'm looking for, or, just the button needs to be more obvious, or the words need to be more descriptive, or, we need a tooltip over that because it isn't intuitive. So there is quite a bit of work that we do on that. We're also looking at, making sure that as part of our process, we do put this kind of customer experience layer on top of everything we do before we look at releasing it. So, and we're working with KPMG at the moment, and we're doing quite a bit of work on that kind of customer experience area and what we can do better in there, to really make sure that not just, as I said, myself and the general manager who might be testing it, but the whole business looks at everything through the lens of how that customer is going to use it. And, the fact that we're not all as, switched on technically as the tech designers and those people who do the coding are.
And that's a hard thing to do sometimes, especially when you're helping design the product, because you're in it, you've built it, you've had it in your mind, you've been thinking about it for weeks or months or a specific feature.
Yep.
And then trying to get to separate yourself out of and being that person who's never seen it before and looking at it for the first time. I think that's a really difficult thing.
It is. And I think one of the things from the people who are designing the product is, as you said, they get into their head, they've been working on it for a long time. I think what people have to start doing is looking at, broadening their view and looking at different options of delivery. So, I like to see when our designers come to me with something and say, okay, we want you to test this and have a look. We want to, we think it's ready for release. I'd like to see more than one delivery option, because it does mean that you've thought about those different things from a customer perspective. And often, as you said, once people have worked on something for 3 months and they've delivered you something, they don't like any criticism of it because, it's part of them. They've built it, and that's understandable. It's their baby. They've built it up. But yep. I think when you are getting ready to do the delivery, the way you deliver it, I think you need to think through a couple of options, because even that process of putting a couple of alternatives down, I think will make a designer or a developer look at something a little bit differently, and they'll pick up something they wouldn't have seen if they just stuck with here's the way we think it's going to be the best way.
Yeah, and that's probably when it's really useful to have some prototypes or some wireframes drawn up first. At least you, as the designer, you work through, you get your ideas, you get different concepts out. Sometimes you might spend 20 minutes on an icon because you need to get the right message across through a visual mechanism. And it's important to do that at times, but spending all day picking icons is no good either, because I've been stuck down that path. But it is really important to get those visual cues right, and trying different layouts or different ways to present information or to capture information can help you work through that and then evolve the idea until you get the one that works potentially. Or you present A, B, and C because you just don't know which one works better. Yeah.
And I think we're all time poor. So everyone gets stuck into that, this is a really good solution, I'm just going to go down that pathway. It's easy to understand. And we're a small business. We have 6 people in the business. So everyone's wearing lots of different hats. We're lucky that there's 6 of us. I suppose at one stage there was 3. So, we have been able to branch out a little bit, but it is still, founders will know that you get pulled in hundreds of different directions in areas that you never would have even imagined that you would have to learn anything about.
Yeah, well, as a founder, you're wearing all the hats at once. And then even you've got 4 other people outside of yourself and Errol, there's still a lot of hats you're wearing that are probably overlapping with those people a little bit as well, until you can scale and move out of that position and actually go from start up to scale up, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. The amount of legal meetings I have that I've never had before, and patent.
They're always fun.
We have lodged a patent for Kira, so we're working with the Charles Sturt University. We're looking to do some research with the product next year, particularly around, we're hoping to focus on, productivity and do some actual research about how that's going to benefit businesses. And for Australia, that's a really important, lifting our productivity is very important.
Oh, definitely. So what are some of the bigger challenges you've seen over the last couple of years in trying to bring Kira to market?
I think the B2B market, I suppose the challenge is just the slowness in that process. You're not selling to consumers, so making sure you're getting the right contacts. And Australian businesses they're not overly keen to try new things. They'll, once something's a bit proven, they'll jump in. But this product is, it's completely new. It's not something that anybody else is doing. And so it takes the right kind of company to be wanting to take a bit of a risk, because, one, there is a risk in startups. We're not an established business, so you kind of have got to get through that. But also there's a risk in, changing the technology, moving away from, everything on a dashboard where you've got so much information you don't even know where to start, and moving off spreadsheets. Errol always talks about the fact that, we could kill the spreadsheet. A reason we have built all our product on Apple technology, and certainly we see that as an advantage, but we also see it as an advantage where, we can move away from laptops, and salespeople could, start to use iPads and things like that out in the field, rather than having to drag around laptops, because they're not having to go and pull everything down to a spreadsheet and manipulate it to get the information they want. Part of that kind of customer experience too is making sure that we have regular reviews with our customers, so that we are picking out the things that they're using, developing those more so that they're getting the right information, adding different information in. So, we've recently added some things like delivery performance in that we didn't have in before, so that when salespeople are going out to meet with their customers for their kind of quarterly reviews or any kind of meetings, they have a whole lot of information at their fingertips. So not just their sales information, but, how their delivery performance is going, how many credits or non-conformance issues they've had, what is that costing, where is that information? So it helps them pull a whole lot of information together. We can bring like CRM data in, all of that kind of thing. So from a leadership point of view, you want to see how your team's going. It's easy to see all those things in one spot. You've got their sales numbers, their CRM, everything together.
I think that's probably the power of what these new AI models allow you to do, is crunch a lot of data from all these different systems, but present it in a way that's not just another spreadsheet.
Correct.
Because previously everything was pull all these systems together and dump it into another spreadsheet to bring the information forward. But now you can generate the words, as you say, to then help people understand what they're seeing, what insights they're pulling from it, what that means, what the trends are in plain English, not just trying to understand a best fit line on a graph and interpreting that yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And, then the beauty of AI is you can keep digging. So it gives you one set of information. You want to focus on a particular thing, you can dig further into that area. So might be telling you that there's one kind of sector of the market that's doing really well. That's where you need to focus for your new business. You can then start to use AI to say, okay, well, let's give me some more information about that industry and, where I should be looking, and all of that kind of support that comes in the background that can help you once you've got the insight. So you know where to look, it directs you.
Yeah, and that's key to any business making decisions, especially in a fast-paced world like we have at the moment.
And, we think from a leadership point of view, a senior leadership point of view, when we start to bring the new products in, so things like procurement and working capital and all of those things, you start to see a really full picture of what your business looks like in one spot. And I think that's quite critical because, often your CEOs are very reliant on everyone else to bring them information, and therefore what they get is often filtered. It can be filtered to whether you want to deliver something to a CEO or not,
Yep.
and how you want to deliver it. So I think what this allows is it's quite easy for anyone, and often your CEOs aren't, not often, I shouldn't say, they're not as they're not technical users, or they don't use the systems every day, and nor would you want them to. But being able to go into somewhere where everything sits in plain language in one spot, and essentially they can ask questions, and if they want, what were the sales for this customer, or what happened in this state, and it just delivers it to them.
And there's a lot of power in that.
Correct, yeah.
Well, Deena, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. If anyone wants to find out more about yourself or Kira, how can they do that?
Certainly they can go to the website, so www.kira.ai, and Kira spelled KIRAA. And there's contact information on there. There's some case studies on there. But yeah, please feel free to get in touch. We also can go through our LinkedIn. So again, that's Kira, KIRAA, and or myself or Errol Brandt.
And we'll add all of that to the show notes. Once again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me on an episode of the DevReady podcast.
Excellent. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.